Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right there from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we'll dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and general impressions of the piece. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, so if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it, but if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome, and of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends. Another solo show this week for me. I am diving in this week to the TV show Encore on Disney Plus. It's one of those that came out kind of right at the top, and the premise of the show, for those that don't know, is casts from high school that did a musical reuniting to kind of do an abridged version of that, all these years later. It's been on my radar as something I wanted to check out since kind of came out, because I thought the premise was interesting, especially as somebody that got into theater in high school. And so when I was looking for something to do this week, it was there. The first thing in the recommended for you section was Encore. So I said, yeah, I'm just going to sit down and watch Encore. And there are 12 episodes in the first season, each one kind of centered around a different school/cast/year/musical. And so I looked in there to see, well, the show that I did in high school was Oklahoma. Is there an episode dedicated to Oklahoma? And sure enough, there was. So that was the one I sat down to watch, and that's the one I'm going to be discussing today. So a little bit of the history lesson on Encore here. The show was originally released as part of the kind of first run of Disney Plus shows between November 12th, 2019 and January 24th, 2020. This particular episode came to Disney Plus on December 13th, 2019. So other releases of the time and other things in the Disney timeline of things that we usually run through, of course, are, again, those first-run Disney Plus shows like The Mandalorian, like High School Musical, the musical, the series, like The Imagineering Story. Runtime for this show is 50 to 60-minute episodes. They kind of dive into kind of an hour of the show. And, there's not too much of a, who's who for this one, roll call, because it's more like people in real life kind of thing. But the director of these is Coy Middlebrook. Doesn't really have any other major IMDb credits to his name. And then technically starring Kristen Bell, although she was, I think, barely in this, or maybe even just did a voiceover intro in this one. But of course, Kristen Bell is also an executive producer on the show. And she is, of course, best known from stuff like Veronica Mars. She is Anna in the Frozen films. She's in The Good Place, and she is a sloth enthusiast extraordinaire. If you've ever seen her freaking out at sloth videos on the internet, they are delightful because she gets so overwhelmed by them. The show itself doesn't seem to have too much trivia in the IMDb thing, but this particular episode did, so I want to shout this out because I feel like somebody from this kind of little community probably put this in here. But the trivia note is the hat that Brad Donod wore in this show was Jim Niles' personal hat. And you kind of see him wearing it in some of his interviews to the camera. Jim being the guy that kind of in this has overcome kind of drug problems and is working as a septic engineer, I believe is the title that they give him. And Brad is kind of the cocky going into it, ends up playing Ike Skidmore kind of in the ensemble role of things. So those are who we're talking about here. But as back to the hat, the band on it was made from an alligator that Brad and Jim caught and ate. Brad tanned the hide himself and stitched it to the hat. Jim calls it his magic hat. He wore it on all his adventures, from biking across Vietnam to Alaskan crab fishing to Alaskan crab fishing in the Bering Sea. From the month he spent in Kathmandu to his attempts to sail the seven seas with two friends. This hat has an amazing history. So that was a cute little thing on the trivia page in IMDb. And shout out to all the people in this really that had their kind of personal stories that they kind of discuss and overcome. Does this hold up? It's obviously only well, about a year old now, I guess. I think it does. I don't. I think because of COVID, any potential plans that there might have been for a season 2 probably got put on hold since, all of the arts kind of got crippled. But yeah, I think it's a cute little premise for a show. I look forward to sitting down and watching some of the other episodes now. So I want to talk about kind of some of my favorite little moments and scenes from this. Again, I specifically picked this episode because Oklahoma was the first show I ever really did in high school. It was the show that got me into theater. And as much as I don't really like the show now, like I would be less inclined to go and watch it now. Although the revival they recently did, I think, has some probably cool ideas behind it. So that would be an interesting approach to it. But Oklahoma it's a show that I was in because I was in choir. It was and basically like if you were a guy in choir, they would put you on that stage no problem. I was in the ensemble. My big claim to fame is during the Kansas City number. There were a couple little moments in there. Because I was a drummer, I was really good with rhythm, so I could do the like ragtime like dance stuff. So I was one of the featured dancers in that number. And in the song Kansas City, Will Parker's out there and he's singing, they got a big theater, they call a burlicue, for 50 cents you can see a dandy show. And then another person like chimes in, girls? I was the girls guy. That was my little moment in the show. I got to have a fun little laugh line there as a horny little rancher boy, or cowboy boy. I don't remember which side of the cowboys versus ranchers debate they were on, but it was a ton of fun. And I certainly had great memories doing that show with all of my friends in high school and all the different people that were in that show. The bug stuck, and I started doing theater after that. So shout out to Oklahoma, even if it is, one of just kind of not my cup of tea anymore. In terms of like, I feel like it's a very dated piece, but again, like I alluded to, and is even kind of referenced in here, there was a revival on Broadway a couple years ago, or a year ago or two, that basically didn't change a word of the script, but it changed everybody's intentions from being like a very lovely thing to a very like antagonistic relationship between everybody. And there's a song in the show in particular that always stood out to me, and so it's the kind of thing like we would discuss these as ideas in college and stuff about like how would you make Oklahoma interesting or something like that, because there's a song in there called Poor Judd is Dead, where basically Curly is trying to almost convince Judd Fry, the bad guy of the show, that he would be better off if he just killed himself, rather than be, a rival to Curly's affections for Lori. And it can very easily turn into a very dark number. And that seems to be kind of the idea behind the recent revival. It's everybody else is the bad guy, not Judd. And so it was an interesting little approach that it was supposed to, I believe, come through town here if shows had been going on and touring, and I probably would have gone and seen it just to see kind of what that new take looks like. But again, kind of all of the arts got really thrown for a loop this year. But yeah, so the show is very familiar to me, and so that made for a very accessible kind of entry point into this series. Is like, let me look at a show I know really well, and as soon as they start singing the numbers and stuff, everything starts coming back to me. A couple little things I liked here, in terms of like just the documentary style of this. There was a great moment where the teacher, Laura, is out there talking to her drama students, and she's obviously going to be one of the kind of the people coming back as well. And she's out there teaching her students and talking about the idea that, theater is not about me. It's not about one person. It's not about my ego. And then they immediately cut to Brad there. And he's like, yeah, I was the best. I was better than everyone. Ha ha ha. And it was a great kind of like juxtaposition, like, moment between those ideas, and Brad very much kind of gets set up as the cocky guy, so when he ends up getting cast in the ensemble and not getting one of the leads, that becomes his thing to overcome in this, and kind of coming to terms with that. But obviously, I think the standout of this episode is the fact that the guy who plays Woody, or the guy Woody, the person who played Will Parker in the original run, was in an accident in 2012, and can't walk anymore. He's in a wheelchair, and when they end up casting him to be Will Parker again, it's how are you going to how is that going to change, his interpretation of the role and all that stuff. And this is where kind of it ties into the Broadway version of Oklahoma, which the Ado Annie in that was played by Ali Stroker, who is a wheelchair-bound actress, and she ended up, blowing everybody away. She won the Tony that year for her performance, and so she comes in kind of like they have a good little like pep talk between the two, and it was a very nice, heartfelt moment. There's a lot of that in this, and my emotional theater side of things was definitely kind of in full force. A couple of other things I liked that Laura and Chris, who are kind of they end up getting cast as the Lori and Curly in this, were high school sweethearts kind of thing, and basically have turned into Laura's parents, who were the big drama teachers in this small school. I don't remember if I went into it, but this is all 1991 is when their original performance was in Snellville, Georgia, specifically Brookwood High School. So it was just a very small town kind of feel behind this, and some of some of the performers kind of talk about how they thought they were the shit when they were doing this kind of back in the day, and very quickly had kind of an eye-opening experience when they tried to go and like make it in the big city and that kind of stuff, which very relatable, #relatable. There was a lot of like just nice little moments when the people, so they may mention when they do the auditions to like recast the people, that the original leads from the production that they had done, the original Lori and the original Ado Annie did not come back to participate in this project, so they were going to have to recast that kind of thing. But they did, like the people that came back, the core little group of people that we follow, all went back to somebody's place and watched, a VHS version of the show from when they'd done it, and that was a very, heartwarming thing. I'm sure I could go to my parents' house and find the VHS copy of my version of Oklahoma that I was in, and see, all the friends that I haven't thought about in years, kind of going back to that. And there was probably, apart from just everything involving the actual performance that they got to, which just was a delight and a joy to see these people put this thing together so quickly and get to kind of relive this experience. They did an exercise in like the drama classroom that was basically like invite your past self to sit by you and talk to them, about this experience. And everybody kind of like had a very heartwarming conversation with their past selves, and it was incredibly emotional. Like I was tearing up. I don't know these people at all. I don't know these people from anything, but the things that they've gone through clearly were, I think, very well conveyed in such a short time again here that I felt for all of them. And this moment of catharsis, again, very reminiscent to many classes that I had in college, many an experience I had in my time doing theater. So it was very, very emotional and cathartic for me, even to kind of imagine going through this experience like they were going through. It was a very beautiful moment. Like juxtapose that with all the guys going and playing pool at the local bar and then singing Oklahoma, and just like all the other bar goers there just being like, what the F is going on? Why are they doing this? What? And just not giving a crap. And that was really the last thing I ended up taking notes on, because from then on they get into kind of like, they do the show, abridged version of the show, whatever. And I was just like enthralled and enjoying that. A lot of their family were there to see the show, and in kind of getting to see their reactions to their family members being back up on stage, many of whom they'd never seen on stage, and all that kind of stuff was very delightful and heartwarming. And yeah, just everybody had such a great energy that they brought into this project, and it was really cool to see. It's not something I think I would ever, like, if they had said, like, hey, class of 2003, we're bringing back your production of Oklahoma, do you want to come back and be a part of this? I would have been like, no, not really. Like, I mean, especially in like the capacity I was in, because I never really got into the singing side of things. That was like very few times have I ever actually done a musical, and a lot of that comes from I have a very low voice, and I'm very self-conscious about not being able to hit higher notes, and most of musical theater is written for baritones and tenors, not for basses. Like, the number I could do, the person I could be in Oklahoma would be Judd Fry. That's the only role I can really like comfortably sing. Anything else, I'm out of my depth and out of my range, and just get in my head as a result of it. So as much as I like wanted to play Curly in high school because I had curly hair and thought it'd be, you know, a fun kind of like breakout, you know, experience, that was never going to be me, because I just couldn't sing the part. And so yeah, I strayed largely from musicals and did mostly straight plays, so wouldn't really have any interest in going back and doing Oklahoma, but kind of seeing this experience, it'd be cool to go back and see a lot of those people, at least, many of whom I have not seen or talked to, even on like Facebook in years and years and years, just because I've very much lived a life where like, oh, high school ended and I went to college. Okay, I mostly lost touch with the high school friends. College ended and I started doing theater stuff. I mostly lost touch with the college friends. I moved away from the theater and started doing video game stuff. I don't really keep in touch too much with the theater friends. I don't see them much. Them a little bit more so, because I still engage with them when I go out and see shows, and I still see a lot of them, you know, at performances around town, or I did, and I'm still friends with a ton of them on Facebook and stuff. But it's very much been like, I've very much compartmentalized those aspects of my life. So high school is now 3, you know, generations removed from people I've been hanging out with and speaking to and stuff. And I'll occasionally still see them pop up on Facebook and stuff. But yeah, actually going and like sitting down and talking and hanging out with these people would probably be a cool little reunion experience, especially since I didn't do like my 10-year high school reunion or anything like that. So yeah, in terms of grading the show, the report card, I give this an A. It's right up my alley. It's a really cool idea, and everybody like brought their A game into their performances. First and foremost, I guess, not even first and foremost. First and foremost, they were all really cool people and engaging, and they seemed to have like cool stories that they were sharing with us, the audience. And the fact that they, you know, brought their A games to the performance was a ton of fun too. So yeah, I had a really good time just sitting down and watching this. Would recommend it to anybody who has not checked out Encore. And again, I'm going to be curious to sit down and watch some of the other episodes dedicated to other musicals, some which I know very well, because they're pretty much all, you know, standard musicals from the musical theater canon, but some of them, you know, I've only seen like once or twice. Like Godspell, I think was the very next episode or something. I'm pretty sure I've only seen Godspell once and did not like it. So like going and seeing that episode, you know, might have a very different feel to it, compared to this one, which obviously I knew very intimately from having performed the show myself. So yeah, that's going to do it for that. In terms of extra credit, other things that Disney Plus suggests, if you like Encore here, are the Disney Annie musical, which featured like Kathy Bates, I think was the lady that like works in the orphanage or something. Like, she's somebody I saw in the thumbnail at least. You have The Sound of Music, you have Hamilton, Mary Poppins, and then you get into kind of the less musical side of things, and you have Disney's Fairy Tale Weddings special, and Marvel Hero Project, and the Imagineering story. So you're on the kind of documentary side of things there. And then rounding out, you have High School Musical, the musical, the series, of course, which shout out to High School Musical, the musical, the series, the holiday special, I think, was just announced. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm pretty sure they just added the holiday special onto yet another colon in that. That got announced, and I'm looking forward to whatever that ends up kind of being. Them doing Christmas and Hanukkah themed music, it sounds like, and then also a little tease for the eventual season 2. So yeah, not really watching anything else on Disney Plus right now. I think I mentioned last week I'm watching through The New Girl on Netflix. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you for joining me to listen to my thoughts on Encore here. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. Another thing I want to give a little shout out to, earlier this week I was on One Big Topic with Mario Piacquadio, aka Mario Not Bros. So you can go check out that episode of me sitting down talking about, quote, the dream of getting into video games in the video game industry with him. It was kind of a fun little look back at basically the last 5 years of my life, when I kind of stepped away from doing theater stuff and started kind of doing more video game and kind of pop culture, YouTube and all this kind of stuff, and what that has looked like. You can follow everything from That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site, of course, or go to thatnerdysite.com. If you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, and all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, as I said, you can always help support us at Patreon by going to patreon.com/thatnerdysite. That basically helps pay for all the podcast feeds, so we can kind of keep all this doing and not, throw ourselves into debt, just throwing money at all this stuff. So thank you for joining me. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.